There was a moment, quiet, almost peaceful, when Susan believed she had finally done it. She had escaped. After 40 years of working, she was free. No alarms, no deadlines, no commute. Just time. Time to rest. Time to breathe. Time to live. And at 60 years old, that felt like a victory. But 3 years later, that same decision would become something else. A mistake. Not a dramatic one. Not an obvious one. But a slow, expensive, and irreversible one. She wasn't impulsive. She was careful. For decades, she worked as an office manager. Reliable, structured, consistent. The kind of person who planned ahead. She paid her bills early, avoided debt, saved regularly, not aggressively, but steadily. And over time, that steady effort created something important, a sense of control. By her late 50s, Susan had what many people aim for: a paid-off home, a modest retirement account, a small emergency fund. Nothing extraordinary, but enough to feel safe. The idea of retirement didn't appear suddenly. It started as a thought. Small, harmless. What if I stopped working sooner? At first, she ignored it. But the thought returned, again and again, because something else was happening. Work was getting harder. Not physically, but mentally. The same routines, the same responsibilities, the same days, repeating. And after decades, that repetition feels heavier. One afternoon, something simple happened. A coworker announced her retirement, age 60. Easy, confident, excited, and something about that moment stayed with Susan because it made something feel possible. Cleus. That night, Susan thought about it, her situation, her savings, her future. And she asked herself a question. Could I do the same? A few days later, she opened her accounts. Retirement balance, savings, expenses, and she started calculating carefully monthly costs, projected income, expected withdrawals. Everything looked manageable. Not abundant, but manageable. Her reasoning felt solid. I don't need much. My house is paid off. I live simply. And I've worked long enough. Each thought felt true, justified. And together, they formed a conclusion. I can retire now. The decision didn't feel risky. It felt earned. A reward. A transition. So Susan gave her notice. 2 weeks. A few conversations. A small farewell. And just like that, her working life ended. The decision didn't feel risky. It felt earned. A reward. A transition. So Susan gave her notice. 2 weeks. A few conversations. A small farewell. And just like that, her working life ended. The beginning felt exactly how she imagined. Calm. Quiet. Unstructured. She woke up without alarms, drank coffee slowly, went for walks, watched the day unfold, without pressure, and for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. But after a few months, something shifted. Not dramatically, not immediately, but gradually. Because when structure disappears, something else appears. Time. A lot of it. At first, time feels like freedom. But over time, it can feel different. Long. Unstructured. Empty. Susan started noticing it. Long afternoons. Quiet evenings. Days that felt similar. Not stressful, but not fulfilling either. At the same time, her financial routine changed. She stopped earning and started withdrawing. Each month, money moved in the opposite direction. Out. At first, it didn't feel important. That's what savings are for. That's what retirement means. But slowly, a thought appeared. This is finite. And once that thought appears, it doesn't leave. How long will this last? Susan didn't calculate immediately, because calculating makes things real, precise, and sometimes uncomfortable. So instead, she continued, living carefully, spending modestly, believing everything was under control. The first year passed quietly. No crisis. No emergency. Everything worked. Bills were paid. Routine continued. And that reinforced her belief. I made the right decision. But time doesn't stand still. And retirement isn't static. Costs change. Needs change. And slowly, pressure builds. Not suddenly, but steadily. And Susan was about to feel it. The second year didn't begin with a problem. It began with a pattern. Quiet. Consistent. Almost invisible. Every month till then. Susan did the same thing. She opened her account, looked at the balance, then paid her bills, utilities, groceries, insurance. Nothing unusual, nothing excessive, but something had changed. The balance didn't stay the same. It moved down. At first, the change felt small. A few $100s, then a few thousand. But over time, the small changes began to accumulate. And once she noticed it, she couldn't stop noticing it. It's going down faster than I expected. That thought didn't come suddenly. It formed slowly, over months. Each time she checked her account, it returned. So Susan did what careful people do. She adjusted, spent less, cut small things, fewer dinners out, less shopping, more awareness, more control. But even with those changes, the pattern didn't stop, because there was something else happening, something she hadn't fully accounted for. Inflation. Prices rising. Quietly. Gradually. But consistently. Groceries cost more. Utilities increased. Insurance adjusted. Each expense slightly higher than before. And over time, those increases mattered. Susan started recalculating her monthly expenses, her withdrawal rate, her long-term plan, and this time, the numbers felt tighter, less flexible, less forgiving. That's when the question changed. It was no longer, "Am I okay?" It became, "How long will this actually last?" One evening, she sat down with her laptop, opened a simple calculator, entered her total savings, subtracted her monthly expenses, projected forward 10 years, 15, 20, and the result was not what she expected. There was a gap, a period of time where the money might not last, not immediately, but eventually, and that realization felt different. It didn't cause panic, but it created something else. Background anxiety, a constant awareness, a subtle pressure. Because now, every decision felt connected to time. Susan became more careful, more aware, more controlled. She delayed purchases, avoided expenses, started thinking twice about everything, and slowly, retirement began to feel different. Because retirement isn't just about freedom, it's about sustainability. And when sustainability becomes uncertain, freedom starts to shrink. Something else happened too. Susan started saying no more often. To invitations, to trips, to plans. Not because she didn't want to go, but because she was thinking ahead, always ahead. And over time, that creates distance. Not intentional, but rooted in because financial pressure often becomes social distance. By the time Susan turned 63, something had shifted completely. Not her situation, her mindset. It happened during a simple conversation. A friend mentioned Social Security. "How much are you receiving?" Susan paused. Because she wasn't receiving anything. She had decided to wait, to maximize her benefit later. At 67, that had seemed like a smart decision at the time. But now, it felt different. Because waiting meant something else. No income. For years. And suddenly, Everything connected. Her shrinking savings, her lack of income, her longer timeline. And for the first time, Susan felt something stronger than concern. Pressure. Real pressure. That night, she asked herself something new. Did I retire too early? That question stayed unanswered, but present, because once it appears, it changes everything. Susan didn't panic, but she started thinking differently. About time, about money, about decisions. And slowly, a realization began to form. Retirement wasn't just about stopping work. It was about replacing income. And she had stopped one, without fully replacing the other. The question didn't go away. Did I retire too early? It stayed with Susan. Quiet, persistent, following her through the day. A few days later, she decided to look deeper, not just at her savings, but at the system she had been relying on. Social Security. She logged into her account, the same screen she had looked at years earlier. But this time, she paid more attention. 3 numbers appeared. Claim at 62. Claim at 67. Claim at 70. She already knew them. But now, they felt different. If she waited until 67, her benefit would be higher. Much higher. That had been her plan. Maximize later. Be patient. Get more. But now, waiting had a cost. 5 years, with no Social Security income. 5 years of withdrawals. 5 years of watching her savings decline. She looked at the earlier option. Claim now. At 63. A reduced benefit. Permanent. Lower every month. For the rest of her life. That's when the situation became clear. There was no perfect option. Only trade-offs. Take less money, or risk running out later. Wait longer, or increase pressure now. Susan had always believed something, that retirement decisions were made once, carefully, confidently. But now, she realized something different. They can be revisited, and sometimes they have to be. She ran the numbers again. If she continued withdrawing at her current pace, her savings would drop significantly, too significantly. But if she started Social Security now, she could reduce the pressure, stabilize, extend the timeline. But logic wasn't the only factor. Emotion was there too. Because starting early felt like losing something. A better future. A higher payment. Something she had planned for. Something she believed she earned. But reality doesn't wait for perfect timing. And sometimes, the best decision now is not the best decision long term. It's the least damaging one. After days of thinking, Susan made a decision. She would claim Social Security early, at 63. The application didn't feel dramatic, just like retirement hadn't felt dramatic. A form, a confirmation, a simple process. But behind that process was a permanent change. A monthly benefit would be lower, not slightly, significantly. Every moss tele for life. In exchange, she gained something. Immediate income. Stability. Relief. When the first deposit arrived, Susan felt something familiar. Relief. Because now, money was coming in again, not just going out. And for a while, it worked. The pressure eased. The withdrawals slowed. The situation felt manageable again. But something else had changed. Something permanent. Her future income. Because that reduced payment would follow her forever. Year after year. Decade after decade. At first, that didn't feel important, because the present problem was solved. But retirement isn't short, and the future has a way of catching up. Months later, another thought appeared. What if I had waited? She started comparing her current benefit versus what it could have been at 67. The gap was larger than she remembered. Hundreds of dollars. Every mostly. She multiplied it. 12 months. Then 20 years. And the number became uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. That's when she understood something deeper. She hadn't just retired early. She had made a sequence of decisions, each one affecting the next. Retire early. Withdraw savings. Claim benefits early. And together, they created a different outcome. Not a disaster, but not what she planned. Not what she expected, and not what she would have chosen if she had seen it clearly from the beginning. At first, life felt stable again. The Social Security payments helped. Not large, but consistent, and consistency creates comfort. Every mostly. The same pattern returned. A deposit. Bills paid. Careful spending. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. But something had changed. Not in her bank account. In her mind. Susan now saw everything differently. Every expense felt connected to time. Every decision felt permanent, because now she understood something clearly. There was no reset button. One afternoon, she met a former coworker, someone who had retired later, at 67. During the conversation, the topic came up again. Social Security. Monthly income. Her coworker mentioned the amount, and Susan felt it immediately. The difference. Larger than expected. More than just numbers. It felt like space. Financial space. Room to breathe. Susan didn't react outwardly. She smiled, nodded, continued the conversation, but internally, something shifted, because she could see it now. Not theoretically, practically, more flexibility, less pressure, more choices, small things, but meaningful ones. That night, she sat quietly at home, and one thought returned. I was close to a different outcome, close to a more stable future, but just a few decisions had changed the direction. Regret doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, persistent. It appears in small moments, when comparing, when reflecting, when thinking about time. Susan didn't feel panic. She felt something else. Constrained. Because now, her options were narrower, more limited, more fixed. Retirement wasn't 3 years. It wasn't by. It could be 20. Or more. And now, every year would follow the same structure. Reduced income, careful spending, limited flexibility. Time in retirement moves differently, faster than expected, and slower at the same time. Days pass quickly, but the long-term picture becomes clearer. Susan didn't fail. She didn't make a reckless decision. She made a reasonable one. That's what made it dangerous. Because reasonable decisions can still lead to difficult outcomes. Retirement decisions are not isolated. They connect. One choice leads to another. Retire early. Withdraw savings. Claim benefits early. And together, they shape the entire future. Over time, Susan accepted it. Not happily, but realistically. This was her path now, and she would manage it, like she always had. Carefully, but with less margin. Less for this era. Most people think retirement is about stopping work, but it isn't. It's about replacing income sustainably for decades. Before retiring early, there's one question that matters more than any other. Where will my income come from for the next 20 years? Not the next 2. Not the next 5. 20. Because savings are not infinite, and time is longer than it feels. Retiring early feels like freedom, and in many ways, it is. But freedom without structure can create pressure, and pressure over time changes everything. Susan's story isn't her. It happens quietly, to careful people, responsible people, people who believe they've planned enough, because the most expensive financial mistakes don't always come from risk. Sometimes they come from timing, from decisions that feel right but are made too early. And sometimes the difference between a comfortable retirement and a constrained one is just 3 years.